"Don't get in that ambulance," shouts the poor girl, soaked and frightened, to the millionaire's pregnant wife. Minutes later, the men in white coats approach silently, holding a syringe and avoiding any identification. The husband, still stunned by the accident, senses that something is wrong and decides to flee even without understanding why. That night, what seemed like help changed their lives. What do you think it was? If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The rain pounded against the windshield of the Tesla Model S as it glided silently through the winding roads of Silicon Valley. The rhythmic swish of the wipers provided the only soundtrack to what had become an all-too-familiar silence between Ethan and Melissa Carter. Ethan's knuckles were white against the steering wheel, his tired eyes fixed on the slick road ahead. At 36, he had already achieved what most tech entrepreneurs only dreamed of, founding and scaling Horizon Technologies into a billion-dollar company that was revolutionizing artificial intelligence. Beside him, Melissa absently caressed her 6-month pregnant belly, her gaze fixed on the raindrops racing across her window. At 32, she had put her own career as a pediatrician on hold, a decision that had seemed simple when they'd first learned about the baby. But the past months had been lonely. Ethan had buried himself deeper in his work, coming home well past midnight most days, his mind still occupied with algorithms and investor meetings, even when physically present. "The Gardners are looking forward to meeting you," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "James has been trying to get me to consider their investment for months." Melissa nodded, not turning from the window. "I remember. You mentioned it during our anniversary dinner, right before you took that call and disappeared for an hour." Ethan winced. "I'm sorry about that. But tonight is different. This dinner isn't just about business. It's about us too. I know I've been distant and I want to change that." She finally turned to him, her eyes searching his face for sincerity. "Is that why we're driving to Woodside in this storm? For us? The meeting with the Gardners has been planned for weeks, but yes, I thought we could use this time together. The drive, the dinner, a chance to reconnect." He reached over and placed his hand over hers. "I miss you, Mel." For the first time in weeks, Melissa's expression softened, her fingers interlaced with his. "I miss you too." The moment was interrupted by the sudden glare of headlights in Ethan's rearview mirror. A black SUV was approaching fast from behind, much too fast for the slick conditions. "What the hell is this guy doing?" Ethan muttered, easing the Tesla toward the right to let the vehicle pass. But the SUV didn't pass. Instead, it matched Ethan's decreased speed, hanging ominously close to their bumper. The high beams bored into the Tesla, flooding the interior with harsh white light. "Ethan, something's not right," Melissa said, her voice tight with apprehension. Ethan accelerated slightly, hoping to create distance. The SUV followed suit, remaining uncomfortably close. Then, without warning, its headlights went dark. "What the—" Ethan barely had time to register what was happening before the SUV swerved into their lane, clipping the Tesla's rear bumper. The world tilted and spun. Melissa's scream pierced the air as their car left the road. Ethan felt the sickening sensation of weightlessness as the Tesla rolled. Once, twice, then came the impact as they crashed into the ravine below. When Ethan regained consciousness, the world was upside down. Disoriented, he blinked against the blood trickling into his eyes from a gash on his forehead. The airbags had deployed and deflated. Pain radiated through his chest with each breath. "Melissa?" His voice was a rasp in the silence. Turning his head, he saw her suspended in her seatbelt, unconscious. Her face was cut, and a thin line of blood trailed from her temple. Her hand still rested protectively over her stomach. Panic surged through him. With trembling fingers, he released his seatbelt and fell awkwardly to the roof of the inverted car. Every movement sent jolts of pain through his body, but adrenaline pushed him forward. He had to get Melissa out. He had to save their baby. With effort, he managed to crawl out through the shattered driver's side window. The rain continued to pour, washing the blood from his face as he staggered around the wreckage to the passenger side. "Help!" he shouted into the darkness. "Somebody help us!" As if in answer to his plea, he saw lights approaching from the road above. Relief flooded through him as he made out what appeared to be an ambulance making its way down the embankment, its tires slipping in the mud. "Over here!" Ethan waved frantically. "My wife is pregnant. Please hurry." The ambulance came to a stop about 20 yards from the wreckage. As Ethan limped toward it, something made him pause. The vehicle's siren was silent, and there was something off about its appearance. The red cross on its side seemed faded, almost as if it had been hastily painted on. "Don't go near it. They're not real." The small voice came from behind a large oak tree. Ethan squinted through the rain to see a young girl, no more than 8 years old, her soaked clothes clinging to her thin frame. Her dirty blonde hair was plastered to her pale face, and her feet were bare and muddy. "What?" Ethan asked, confused and desperate. "That ambulance was parked up there before the accident," the girl said, pointing up to the road. "I saw it. And look at the siren, it's just a sticker. Real ambulances have real sirens." Ethan turned back to the approaching vehicle, his senses suddenly on high alert. The girl was right. The siren wasn't flashing, but was merely a decal. And as two men in white coats stepped out, he noticed they wore no identification badges. One carried what looked like a syringe. A chill that had nothing to do with the rain ran down Ethan's spine. Acting on instinct, he ran back to the Tesla, and ignoring the pain that threatened to overwhelm him, managed to unbuckle Melissa and carefully pull her from the wreckage. "This way," the girl said, already moving toward a gap in the fence that lined the ravine. "Hurry!" With Melissa cradled in his arms, Ethan followed the child, staggering through the mud and undergrowth. Behind them, he could hear the men calling out, their voices carrying an edge of frustration rather than concern. They made it through the fence and into a dense thicket of trees. The girl led them to a hollow beneath the twisted roots of an ancient oak, just large enough to hide them from view. "Stay here," she whispered. "They won't find you." Ethan held Melissa close, trying to shield her from the rain. She stirred slightly in his arms, a soft moan escaping her lips. "Who are you?" Ethan asked the girl. "Why are you helping us?" She looked at him with eyes that seemed far older than her years. "I'm Lucy," she said simply, "and those men want to hurt you." Before Ethan could respond, Lucy pressed a finger to her lips. The beam of a flashlight swept through the trees nearby. They held their breath as footsteps approached, then gradually receded. After what seemed like an eternity, they heard the sound of a vehicle starting up and driving away. "We need to get Melissa to a hospital," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "Our baby." "Not the hospital," Lucy insisted. "Not yet. They'll be watching. I know someone who can help." "Someone safe?" Ethan hesitated, torn between the desperate need for medical help and the inexplicable trust he felt toward this strange child who had appeared out of nowhere to save them. In his arms, Melissa's eyes fluttered open. "Ethan?" Her voice was weak, confused. "I'm here, Mel. We're going to be okay." He looked back at Lucy, decision made. "Lead the way." Lucy nodded and stepped out into the rain once more, her small form a silhouette against the stormy night. With Melissa in his arms, Ethan followed, leaving behind the wreckage of their car and stepping into an uncertain future, guided by a mysterious child who seemed to know far more than she should. The journey through the woods seemed endless. Rain continued to pour, turning the ground into treacherous mud that sucked at their feet with each step. Ethan's muscles screamed in protest as he carried Melissa, who drifted in and out of consciousness. Every few minutes, he would pause to check on her, relief washing over him when she squeezed his hand in response. Lucy moved ahead with surprising confidence, her small form navigating the darkness as if she'd walked this path 1,000 times before. Occasionally, she would turn back to make sure they were following, her eyes reflecting what little moonlight filtered through the storm clouds. "How much further?" Ethan called out, his voice barely audible over the rumble of thunder. "They're not far now," Lucy replied, pointing toward a faint light in the distance. "Miss Catherine's cottage is just beyond those trees." As they approached, the silhouette of a small, secluded cabin came into view. Warm light spilled from its windows, a beacon in the tempestuous night. A battered pickup truck was parked outside, partially covered by a makeshift carport. Lucy ran ahead and knocked on the door with urgency. Miss Catherine, please open up." The door swung open to reveal a woman in her early 60s, her silver hair pulled back in a practical bun. She wore flannel pajamas and reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. Her expression shifted from surprise to concern as she took in the bedraggled girl on her doorstep. "Lucy, good heavens, child. What are you doing out in this storm?" Her gaze moved past Lucy to Ethan struggling up the path with Melissa in his arms. "Oh my God. They need help," Lucy explained breathlessly. "The bad men tried to hurt them." Without hesitation, Catherine stepped aside. "Bring her in quickly." The interior of the cabin was modest but warm, with a fire crackling in the stone hearth. Books lined the walls, and the furniture, though old, looked comfortable and well-loved. Ethan gently laid Melissa on the sofa as Catherine bustled about, gathering towels and blankets. "What happened?" Catherine asked, handing Ethan a towel for himself before kneeling beside Melissa. "Car accident," Ethan explained, wincing as he dried his face. "Someone ran us off the road. Then a fake ambulance showed up. If it wasn't for Lucy..." He trailed off, looking around. The girl had disappeared. Catherine nodded, her expression grave as she examined Melissa with practiced hands. "She's in shock, and there's a nasty cut on her head, but her pulse is strong." "The baby?" Ethan's throat tightened. "I don't know." Catherine placed her hands gently on Melissa's abdomen, feeling carefully. After a tense moment, she smiled. "There's movement. That's a good sign." She looked up at Ethan. "I was a midwife for 30 years before I retired. Your wife needs rest and monitoring, but I think both she and the baby will be all right." Relief made Ethan's knees weak. He sank into a nearby chair, the adrenaline that had kept him going finally ebbing away, leaving him shaking and acutely aware of his own injuries. "You're hurt too," Catherine observed, moving to examine the gash on his forehead. "This needs cleaning and probably stitches, but I can manage that. What I want to know is why someone would try to run you off the road and then send a fake ambulance." Before Ethan could respond, Lucy reappeared from what appeared to be the bathroom, now wrapped in a large towel, her wet clothes replaced by an oversized t-shirt that must have belonged to Catherine. "They want to hurt him because of his company," she said matter-of-factly. "The same reason they hurt my mom." Ethan and Catherine both turned to look at the small girl, whose face held an expression far too serious for a child her age. "Lucy, what are you talking about?" Catherine asked gently. "And where have you been?" "I've been worried sick since you disappeared from Sunny Hills Children's Home." Lucy looked down, scuffing her bare foot against the wooden floor. "I couldn't stay there. They were asking too many questions about Mum, and they wouldn't believe me when I told them what really happened." Catherine sighed, a mixture of frustration and compassion crossing her features. She turned to Ethan. "Lucy's mother worked as a night cleaner at Nova Industries. There was an accident 3 years ago. Lucy's been in the system since then, but she ran away from her last placement about 6 months ago. I've been leaving food on my porch for her, but she never stays long enough for me to convince her to get proper help." Ethan's mind was racing, trying to connect the dots. Nova Industries, his company's main competitor, led by the ruthless Victor Blackwell. There had been rumors of unethical practices, but nothing concrete had ever come to light. "Lucy, what happened to your mother?" he asked carefully. Lucy's eyes, blue and piercing, met his. "She found something she wasn't supposed to find. Papers with numbers that didn't make sense to her. She told someone she thought was a friend. Then she had an accident in a room that was supposed to be locked." The implications were chilling. Ethan looked at Catherine, who had gone pale. "Lucy has been fixated on this idea," Catherine said quietly. "That her mother's accident wasn't really an accident. The authorities investigated and found nothing suspicious." "Because they were paid off," Lucy insisted. "Just like they tried to hurt you tonight. I recognized the men from Nova. They used to come to the building late at night when Mom was cleaning. They never signed in. They never wore badges. They had special keys." A groan from Melissa interrupted the conversation. She was stirring, her eyes fluttering open. Ethan was immediately at her side, taking her hand in his. "Ethan!" Her voice was weak but clear. "What happened? Where are we?" "We're safe," he assured her, brushing damp hair from her forehead. "There was an accident, but you're going to be okay. The baby's going to be okay." Melissa's hands went instinctively to her stomach. "The baby, wait, I felt a kick just now." Tears of relief filled her eyes. Then, noticing their surroundings and the unfamiliar faces, confusion clouded her features. "Who are these people? Why aren't we at a hospital?" Before Ethan could formulate a response that wouldn't terrify her, Lucy stepped forward, her small hand reaching out to rest on Melissa's arm. "The hospital isn't safe right now," she said with childlike directness. "The bad men might be waiting there. But Miss Catherine used to deliver babies, so she can help you. And I'm Lucy. I saw what happened and showed your husband where to hide." Melissa blinked, taking in the serious-faced child before her. "You helped us?" Lucy nodded. Like you're going to help me. Catherine cleared her throat. Lucy, why don't you help me prepare some tea and soup for our guests? They must be starving. She gave Ethan a meaningful look. It will give you two a moment to talk. As Catherine led Lucy to the small kitchen area of the cabin, Ethan sat on the edge of the sofa and took Melissa's hands in his. Mel, something strange is happening. I think someone deliberately ran us off the road tonight. Her eyes widened in fear. What? Why would anyone do that? I'm not sure yet, but it might have to do with Nova Industries. He kept his voice low, glancing toward the kitchen where Lucy was helping Catherine set out mugs. The little girl, Lucy. Her mother worked there as a cleaner. She seems to think that Nova was involved in her mother's accident, and now they're targeting us. That's insane, Ethan. She's just a child. Children sometimes create stories to cope with trauma. I know how it sounds, he admitted, but you didn't see the fake ambulance, Mel. And why would someone run us off the road like that? It wasn't a hit and run. They targeted us specifically. Melissa struggled to sit up, wincing slightly. So what do? We can't just hide here forever. I need proper medical care and we need to report the accident to the police. Ethan ran a hand through his still damp hair. Catherine seems to think you and the baby are stable for now. As for the police, he hesitated. If what Lucy says is true, and Nova has influence over local authorities, we need to be careful about who we trust. From the kitchen, they heard Lucy's clear voice. He doesn't believe me yet, but he will when he sees the proof. Ethan and Melissa exchanged glances. What proof could an 8-year-old girl possibly have against one of the most powerful tech companies in Silicon Valley? As if reading their thoughts, Lucy returned carrying a steaming mug of tea. She handed it carefully to Melissa. My mom kept a journal. She wrote down everything she saw, and I remember things too. The rooms, the secret meetings, the special computer with the blue light. I can help you find it all, but first you have to get better. Catherine followed with a tray of soup bowls. Lucy, that's enough for tonight. These people need rest and so do you. Lucy nodded but fixed Ethan with a gaze that seemed to look right through him. They'll try again. They won't stop until they get what they want. A chill ran down Ethan's spine as he realized the truth in the child's words. Whatever was happening, whatever conspiracy they had stumbled into, it was clear that their lives had changed irrevocably. As the storm continued to rage outside, Ethan made a silent vow to protect his family, and perhaps in the process, to uncover the truth that had cost Lucy's mother so dearly. Dawn broke with gentle fingers of light, stretching across Catherine's small living room. Ethan awoke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. He had spent the night in an armchair beside the sofa where Melissa slept, his hand still loosely clasping hers. His body ached from the awkward position and the injuries sustained in the crash, but his mind was surprisingly clear. Careful not to wake Melissa, he extricated his hand and stood, stretching his stiff muscles. The events of the previous night played through his mind like scenes from a thriller movie. The crash, the mysterious ambulance, the strange little girl who had appeared out of nowhere to save them. It all seemed surreal in the soft morning light. The smell of coffee drew him to the kitchen, where Catherine stood at the stove, stirring something in a pot. She glanced up as he entered, offering a sympathetic smile. How did you sleep? She asked, pouring him a mug of coffee. About as well as could be expected, Ethan replied, gratefully accepting the steaming cup. Thank you again for taking us in. Catherine waved away his gratitude. Anyone would have done the same. Your wife had a peaceful night, by the way. I checked on her a few times, no signs of distress, and the baby's movements were normal. Relief washed over Ethan. And Lucy, fast asleep in the spare room. That child has always been resilient. Catherine turned down the heat on the stove and faced Ethan fully. Now perhaps you can tell me more about why someone might want to harm you and your wife. Ethan sighed, leaning against the counter. I run a tech company called Horizon Technologies. We've developed an AI system that's revolutionizing data security. A quantum leap beyond anything currently on the market. Nova Industries, our main competitor, has been trying to acquire us for months, but I've refused their offers. And you think they'd resort to violence over a business deal? Catherine's tone was skeptical. It sounds paranoid, I know, Ethan admitted, but the timing is suspicious. I was scheduled to meet with potential investors last night. Investors who could help us expand globally without Nova's involvement. If that meeting had happened, Nova would lose any leverage they had. Catherine finished, her expression thoughtful. And Lucy's mother worked for Nova. Ethan nodded. According to what Lucy said last night, if she witnessed something illegal at Nova, something her mother discovered, it would explain a lot about her behavior these past 3 years, Catherine mused. The running away, the fear of authorities, the nightmares she wouldn't talk about when she first came to Sunny Hills. A floorboard creaked, and they both turned to find Lucy standing in the doorway, her blonde hair tousled from sleep, Catherine's oversized t-shirt hanging to her knees. I wasn't having nightmares, she said matter-of-factly. I was remembering. Catherine's expression softened. Good morning, sweetheart. Are you hungry? I'm making oatmeal. Lucy nodded but kept her eyes on Ethan. You didn't believe me last night, but you do now, don't you? There was something disconcerting about the child's direct gaze, as if she could see straight through to his thoughts. Ethan hesitated, then decided on honesty. I believe something suspicious is happening, he said carefully. But I need more information before I can understand what we're dealing with. Lucy seemed to consider this, then gave a small nod of acceptance. My mom's journal is hidden. I can take you there, but not until after breakfast. I'm really hungry. The simple, childlike statement amid such serious circumstances startled a laugh from Ethan. Fair enough. Breakfast first. As they ate, Melissa joined them, moving slowly but looking better than she had the night before. The color had returned to her cheeks, and after Catherine's examination confirmed that both she and the baby were stable, the tension in the room eased somewhat. Over breakfast, Ethan used Catherine's landline to call his company's head of security, Jack Reynolds, a former FBI agent he trusted implicitly. Without giving their location, he explained the situation and asked Jack to discreetly investigate the accident scene and monitor any unusual activity around Horizon or their home. One more thing, Ethan added before ending the call. I need you to look into an incident at Nova Industries about 3 years ago. An employee, a cleaning woman, had an accident. I don't have a name yet, but I'll get it to you. When he hung up, he found Lucy staring at him intently. Her name was Sarah, she said quietly. Sarah Miller. And it wasn't an accident. Melissa, who had been silent during most of breakfast, reached across the table to cover Lucy's small hand with her own. Lucy, I'm a doctor, a pediatrician. That means I help children when they're sick or hurt. I also help them when they're scared or sad. If you want to talk about your mom, I'm here to listen. Lucy studied Melissa for a long moment, as if assessing her trustworthiness. You help babies too, even before they're born. Melissa smiled, her free hand resting on her rounded belly. Yes, I help babies too. Something in Lucy's expression softened. My mom used to say that people who help children are special, that they see things others don't. She slid from her chair. I'll show you where the journal is now. Catherine frowned. Lucy, I don't think it's safe for any of you to leave right now. Whoever was after Ethan and Melissa last night could still be looking for them. We won't go far, Lucy assured her. It's hidden in the old treehouse at the edge of your property. Mom gave it to me the night before she didn't come home. She said if anything happened to her, I should keep it safe until I found someone I could trust. The four of them made their way through Catherine's backyard to a copse of trees that marked the boundary of her property. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still sodden, and mist clung to the trees like gauzy curtains. In the tallest oak, almost invisible among the thick foliage, was a weathered treehouse. Lucy scrambled up the makeshift ladder with the agility of youth, disappearing into the small structure. Moments later, she reappeared, clutching a plastic-wrapped package to her chest. She descended carefully and presented it to Ethan with solemn ceremony. Inside the weatherproof wrapping was a simple composition notebook, its pages wrinkled from exposure to humidity despite the protection. The first page bore a name in neat handwriting, Sarah Miller. Ethan, Melissa, and Catherine gathered around as he carefully opened the journal. The entries began 3 years earlier, mundane at first. Notes about cleaning schedules, Lucy's school activities, grocery lists. But about 2 months in, the tone changed. Found something strange tonight, Ethan read aloud from an entry dated April 15th. Server room 3 was supposed to be locked, but the door was ajar. Inside, I saw financial reports on the screen, numbers that didn't match what they announced last quarter. When I mentioned it to Jerry from security, he got weird and told me to forget what I saw, said it wasn't my business. He flipped through more pages, reading snippets. May 2. Overheard Blackwell talking to someone about alternative acquisition methods for Horizon Tech. Said traditional offers weren't working and they needed leverage. May 10th. The numbers are even worse than I thought. They're falsifying data to investors. I should report this, but I'm scared. What about Lucy? The final entry was dated May 12th, the day before Sarah Miller's accident. Took photos of the server screen tonight. Blackwell came in while I was there. He seemed surprised but played it cool. Asked why I was working so late. I lied and said I was catching up after missing a shift. Don't think he believed me. Going to talk to Janet in HR tomorrow. She's always been kind to me. Maybe she can help without putting us at risk. Lucy, who had been silent while Ethan read, spoke up. She never talked to Janet. That night, she woke me up and gave me this journal. Said if anything happened to her, I should hide it and only show it to someone I could trust completely. The next day, they said she fell in a restricted area, that she shouldn't have been there. But Mom never broke the rules, never. Ethan closed the journal, his mind racing. If Sarah Miller had discovered evidence of financial fraud at Nova, and Victor Blackwell knew she had seen it, her accident took on a sinister new meaning. And if Nova was willing to silence a cleaning woman, what would they do to prevent Ethan from exposing them? We need to get these photos, she mentioned, Ethan said. Without concrete evidence, it's just speculation. Lucy shook her head. She didn't have time to give them to me, but I know where she might have hidden them. Mom had a special place at Nova, a loose panel in the janitor's closet on the executive floor. She kept an extra uniform there and sometimes snacks for me when I had to come with her. Lucy, you can't possibly think of going back to Nova, Catherine protested. Not Lucy, Ethan said slowly, an idea forming. But someone who has a legitimate reason to be there might be able to access that closet. Melissa looked at him sharply. Ethan, no, it's too dangerous. Not me either, he reassured her. But Jack Reynolds could arrange something. A building inspection perhaps, or a security review. We just need to give him the exact location. Lucy's face lit up. I can draw a map. I remember every hallway, every room. Mom used to quiz me on them like a game when I had to stay quiet while she worked. As they walked back to the cabin, Ethan's phone vibrated with a text from Jack. Car found abandoned. No police report filed. Home and office under surveillance. Someone's watching. Be careful. Ethan showed the message to Melissa and Catherine, his suspicions confirmed. Whoever had tried to harm them was still out there, still searching. And now they had a journal that potentially implicated Victor Blackwell in fraud and worse. Inside the cabin, Lucy set to work drawing a detailed map of Nova's executive floor, her small face scrunched in concentration. Melissa helped Catherine prepare lunch, while Ethan called Jack back with their new information. We need to move carefully, Jack advised over the phone. If Blackwell suspects you have evidence against him, he'll do anything to silence you. And there's something else you should know. The Gardner investment meeting you missed? James Gardner met with Blackwell this morning instead. The implications were clear. With Ethan missing and presumed incapacitated, Nova was already moving to secure the funding that would have ensured Horizon's independence. We don't have much time, Ethan said grimly as he hung up. Blackwell is making his move. From across the room, Lucy looked up from her drawing, her eyes older than her years. That's what Mom said too, the night she gave me the journal. We don't have much time, but we have something they don't. What's that? Ethan asked. Lucy's smile was small but determined. We have the truth, and Mom always said the truth finds a way, even when people try to bury it. As they gathered around the table to review Lucy's surprisingly detailed map, Ethan couldn't help but wonder if the child's faith would be enough against the resources and ruthlessness of a man like Victor Blackwell. But looking at Melissa's determined face and feeling the weight of Sarah Miller's journal in his hands, he knew they had no choice but to try. The plan took shape over the next 24 hours. Jack Reynolds, moving with the calculated precision of his FBI training, had assembled a small team of trusted Horizon security personnel. Using his connections, he arranged for a legitimate fire safety inspection at Nova Industries headquarters, scheduled for the following morning. The inspectors will have access to all floors, including the executive level, Jack explained, during a secure video call. One of my people will be part of the team posing as a trainee. With Lucy's map, they should be able to locate the janitor's closet and check for the hidden panel. Ethan nodded, studying Lucy's drawing, which lay spread out on Catherine's kitchen table. The child had produced a remarkably detailed layout of Nova's executive floor, complete with security camera locations and access points. It was unsettling to realize how much an 8-year-old had observed and remembered while accompanying her mother during night shifts. "What about us?" Melissa asked, one hand absently rubbing her belly. "We can't stay at Catherine's forever. Someone's bound to come looking eventually." It was a valid concern. They had been at the cabin for 2 days now, and while Catherine had been an unfailingly gracious host, the small space wasn't designed for 4 people. Moreover, Melissa needed proper prenatal care, especially after the trauma of the accident. "I've been thinking about that," Jack said through the laptop screen. "I have a safe house in Mendocino, about 3 hours north of here. Remote, secure, and with a local doctor I trust who can check on Melissa regularly." Catherine, who had been listening silently, spoke up. "That sounds sensible, but what about Lucy? She can't just disappear again. There are people looking for her, legal guardians who need to be notified." Lucy, who had been sitting cross-legged on the floor nearby, drawing on scraps of paper, looked up with alarm. "I'm not going back to Sunny Hills. They don't believe me there. They say I make up stories." Ethan and Melissa exchanged glances. The child's situation presented a moral and legal dilemma. They couldn't simply take her with them, but sending her back into the foster care system, where she might be vulnerable to Nova's influence, seemed equally unconscionable. "What if," Melissa began hesitantly, "we apply for emergency temporary guardianship? Given the circumstances and the potential danger to Lucy, a judge might grant it, especially if Catherine supports the application." "I would," Catherine said firmly. "Lucy's been through enough. She needs stability and protection, not another institution." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "I know a family court judge who owes me a favor. It won't be permanent, but it could buy us some time until this situation is resolved." Lucy had gone very still, her eyes darting between the adults with a mixture of hope and wariness. "Does that mean I'd stay with you?" she asked Melissa. Melissa smiled gently. "For a while, yes, if that's what you want." The child considered this, her small face serious. "Would I have my own room?" A laugh escaped Ethan, breaking the tension. "Yes, you would have your own room." "Okay then," Lucy said with the simple decisiveness of childhood, "but I'm bringing my drawings." As the evening progressed, final preparations were made. Jack would send a car for them at dawn, taking them to Mendocino while his team executed the search at Nova. Catherine would contact the children's home with a plausible story about having found Lucy and keeping her temporarily, while proper arrangements were made. Ethan spent the night reviewing Sarah Miller's journal again, looking for any additional clues they might have missed. The entries painted a picture of a devoted mother, working hard to provide for her daughter, gradually becoming aware of something sinister happening at her workplace. There was a heartbreaking prescience to her final entries, as if she had sensed the danger closing in. He was so absorbed in the journal that he didn't notice Melissa watching him from the doorway until she spoke. "So you should get some rest," she said softly, coming to sit beside him on the small sofa. "Tomorrow will be a long day." Ethan set the journal aside and put his arm around her, drawing her close. "How are you feeling?" "Better. The baby's been active today." She guided his hand to her belly, where he felt a strong kick against his palm. "I think he's telling us he's okay." "He?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Do you know something I don't?" Melissa smiled. "Just a feeling." Her expression grew serious. "Ethan, what are we doing? Running from fake ambulances, hiding in cabins, investigating corporate conspiracies? This isn't the peaceful pregnancy we planned." "I know," he sighed. "I'm sorry. I never thought my refusal to sell to Nova would put us in danger. If I had known—" "No," she interrupted firmly. "This isn't your fault. It's the fault of people who think power and money matter more than human lives." She reached for the journal. Like Sarah Miller, she was just doing her job, trying to take care of her daughter. She didn't deserve what happened to her. And Lucy didn't deserve to lose her mother, Ethan added. That child has been carrying this burden alone for 3 years, with no one believing her. They sat in contemplative silence for a moment, the weight of responsibility settling over them. It wasn't just about clearing their own names or ensuring Horizon's future anymore. It was about justice for Sarah Miller and a chance at a normal life for her daughter. Morning came too quickly, grey light seeping through the cabin's windows as they prepared to leave. Catherine had packed food for their journey and medications for Melissa. Lucy had gathered her drawings and the few possessions she had accumulated during her stays at Catherine's cabin. As they waited for Jack's car to arrive, Lucy tugged at Ethan's sleeve. "Can I show you something?" she asked, her voice uncharacteristically shy. "Of course," he replied, following her to the porch. Lucy handed him a folded piece of paper. When he opened it, he found a crayon drawing of 4 figures standing in front of a house. 2 tall figures clearly meant to be him and Melissa, a small figure with blonde hair that was obviously Lucy, and a tiny figure that appeared to be floating in a bubble near Melissa's midsection. "That's your baby," Lucy explained, pointing to the bubble. "I drew us as a family, is that okay?" Emotion tightened Ethan's throat. "It's more than okay, Lucy, it's beautiful." The sound of a car approaching drew their attention. A nondescript SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the cabin, and a man Ethan recognized as one of Jack's security team stepped out. "Mr. Carter, I'm Steve Hendricks. Jack sent me to bring you to Mendocino." After tearful goodbyes to Catherine, who promised to join them in a few days once she had sorted things out with the children's home, they set off on the winding coastal road toward Mendocino. Lucy sat quietly in the back seat beside Melissa, her small hand clutching her backpack of treasures. About an hour into their journey, Steve's phone rang. He answered via the car's Bluetooth system. "Hendricks." "It's Reynolds." Jack's voice filled the car. "The inspection team is inside Nova now. They've located the janitor's closet on the executive floor." Ethan leaned forward. "Any sign of the hidden panel Lucy described?" "Not yet. They're being cautious. Security is tight up there." Lucy unbuckled her seatbelt and moved to the edge of her seat. "Tell them it's behind the shelf with the cleaning supplies. The blue bottles need to be moved first, then the panel slides up." Jack relayed the instructions. Minutes that felt like hours passed as they waited for a response. "They found it," Jack finally reported, excitement evident in his voice. "There was a small waterproof bag taped to the inside. Contains what looks like a USB drive and several photographs." A collective sigh of relief filled the car. The evidence Sarah Miller had hidden at great personal risk had been recovered. "Get your team out of there, Jack," Ethan instructed. "We don't want to tip our hand to Blackwell yet." Already on it, they're completing the inspection as planned, noting a few minor violations to make the visit look legitimate. "I'll meet you at the safe house with everything we've recovered." As they continued north, the landscape changed, the suburban sprawl giving way to dramatic coastal views. Lucy pressed her face to the window, watching the ocean with evident wonder. "I've never seen the sea before," she confessed when she caught Melissa watching her. "Mom always said she'd take me someday." Melissa's heart ached for the child and all she had lost. "Well, we're going to be staying right near the ocean. You'll be able to see it every day." Lucy's face lit up, but the moment of joy was short-lived. Steve suddenly tensed, his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. "We've got company," he said quietly. "Black SUV, 2 cars back, been following us since we hit Highway 1. Ethan twisted in his seat, trying to spot the vehicle. "Are you sure it's following us? Could be coincidence?" "Changed lanes when we did, maintained exact distance. Professional tale." Steve's voice remained calm, but his knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "I'm going to try to lose them at the next turnoff." Melissa instinctively pulled Lucy closer to her. "Should we call the police?" Steve shook his head. "Not yet. If Blackwell has the influence we suspect, local police might not be reliable. Let me try evasive maneuvers first." At the next intersection, Steve abruptly turned onto a smaller road, accelerating smoothly. The black SUV followed, no longer attempting to disguise its pursuit. "Hold on," Steve warned, executing a sharp turn onto an even narrower side road. The SUV stayed with them, closing the distance. Lucy, rather than being frightened, was studying the road ahead intently. "There's a farm coming up," she said suddenly, "with a big red barn. Mom and I stayed there once when her car broke down. They have a driveway that circles behind the barn." Steve glanced at her in surprise. "You sure?" Lucy nodded confidently. "The lady gave me apple juice and cookies shaped like cows." "Worth a try," Steve muttered, and as the farm appeared ahead, he made a sudden turn into the driveway. Just as Lucy had described, the driveway curved around behind a large red barn, temporarily hiding them from view of the road. Steve didn't slow down, continuing around to a rear exit that led to a different road. "Smart thinking, Lucy," he commended as they sped away, no sign of the black SUV behind them. Lucy beamed at the praise. "Mom said I have a good memory. She called it my superpower." For the next hour, Steve took a circuitous route, frequently changing roads and doubling back to ensure they weren't being followed again. Finally satisfied, he returned to the main route to Mendocino. As the adrenaline of the chase faded, a sobering realization settled over them. Their pursuers had found them remarkably quickly after they left Catherine's cabin. Either they had been followed from the beginning, or someone had leaked information about their movements. "We need to warn Jack," Ethan said, reaching for his phone. "Blackwell might know about the inspection team too." But before he could dial, the phone rang in his hand. It was Jack. "Ethan, we have a problem," he said without preamble. "The USB drive is missing from the evidence bag. Someone got to it before my team did." The implications were clear and chilling. There was a traitor in their midst, someone feeding information to Nova Industries. And as they drove toward the supposed safety of the Mendocino safe house, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were heading into an even more dangerous situation than the one they had left behind. The Mendocino safe house was a weathered Victorian, perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. In better circumstances, it might have seemed charming, even romantic, with its wraparound porch and panoramic ocean views. But as Steve pulled into the gravel driveway, Ethan felt only apprehension. Jack's revelation about the missing USB drive had cast a shadow over everything. "Stay in the car until I've secured the premises," Steve instructed, his hand resting on the gun holstered beneath his jacket. He circled the house methodically, checking windows and doors before returning to signal the all clear. Inside, the house was simply but comfortably furnished, with a lived-in feel that suggested it wasn't merely a safe house, but someone's actual home. Family photos lined the mantelpiece, though the faces had been turned down, presumably to protect identities. "Jack's aunt owns the place," Steve explained, noticing Ethan's curious glance at the photos. "She's in Europe for 6 months. Only Jack and I know you're here." Melissa eased herself onto a plush sofa, fatigue evident in the shadows beneath her eyes. Lucy immediately curled up beside her, protective in a way that seemed at odds with her small stature. "How long will Jack be?" Ethan asked, moving to the window to scan the horizon. The road leading to the house was empty, nothing but coastal scrub and the occasional cypress tree bent by relentless sea winds. "A few hours at most," Steve replied, checking his watch. He needed to tie up some loose ends and make sure he wasn't followed. The mention of being followed brought Ethan's concerns sharply back into focus. "About that, how did they find us this morning? We were careful leaving Catherine's place." Steve's expression tightened. "I've been asking myself the same question. The operation was compartmentalized. Only the team members absolutely needed to know were briefed about your location or the route to Mendocino. So either someone on Jack's trusted team is compromised or—" Ethan hesitated, reluctant to voice the alternative. "Or our communications are being monitored," Steve finished grimly. "Which is why, as of now, we go dark. No phones, no internet, no outside contact until Jack arrives." Lucy, who had been listening intently to the adult conversation, spoke up. "Or someone put a tracker on the car." The simplicity of her suggestion gave them pause. Steve's eyes widened fractionally before he grabbed a handheld device from his bag and headed back outside. When he returned 10 minutes later, his expression confirmed their fears. "Tracker on the undercarriage, professional grade, nearly invisible." He held up a small black disc no larger than a quarter. "I've disabled it, but the damage is done. They know we're in Mendocino even if they don't have the exact address." Ethan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "We need to leave. Find another safe location." "Not yet," Steve cautioned. "Moving now might be more dangerous, especially with Melissa's condition. This house is defensible, and I've got enough firepower to hold off trouble until Jack arrives with reinforcements. Besides, they'd be expecting us to run." The logic was sound, but it did little to ease the tension that had settled over the group. Melissa, sensing Lucy's growing anxiety, suggested they explore the house to find her bedroom and unpack her few possessions. The distraction worked, and soon Lucy was arranging her drawings on the dresser of a small but cheerful room with a window seat overlooking the ocean. Left alone in the living room, Ethan and Steve took inventory of their resources and planned defensive positions, just in case. As they worked, Ethan broached the subject that had been troubling him since Jack's call, the missing USB drive. What exactly did Jack's team find in that hidden compartment? Steve hesitated, glancing toward the hallway to ensure they weren't overheard. Photos, mostly. Sarah Miller was thorough. She documented meetings, whiteboards with financial projections, emails displayed on screens. Enough to prove Nova was cooking their books and planning something against Horizon. But the USB drive would have contained the digital files, probably more comprehensive than the photos alone. And someone removed it before Jack's team got there, Ethan mused, which means Blackwell might not know exactly what evidence we have or don't have. That's the working theory, Steve agreed. It gives us some leverage, but not much. A comfortable silence fell between them as they continued their preparations. Outside, the afternoon sun broke through the coastal fog, casting long shadows across the living room floor. In the kitchen, they could hear Melissa and Lucy preparing a snack, their voices a reassuring murmur of normalcy amid the chaos. The sudden ringing of the landline telephone shattered the peace. Steve motioned for Ethan to stay back as he approached the phone, his hand hovering over the receiver. Nobody's supposed to have this number except Jack. Maybe it's him, Ethan suggested, though uncertainty colored his voice. Steve picked up without speaking. I know they're there, Hendricks. The voice that came through the speaker was smooth, cultured, and unmistakably threatening. Put Carter on the line. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that voice, though he'd only heard it a few times at industry events. Victor Blackwell. Steve's face remained impassive. Wrong number, he said, and hung up. The phone immediately rang again. This time Steve didn't answer, but the machine picked up after 4 rings. Mr. Carter? Blackwell's voice filled the room. I think we've gotten off on the wrong foot. All this cloak and dagger business isn't necessary. I simply want to discuss a business proposition that would benefit us both. Call me back at your convenience. He rattled off a number, and the line went dead. How the hell did he get this number? Steve muttered, lifting the phone to check for tampering. More importantly, how does he know we're here? Ethan countered, moving to the window again. The road remained empty, but the feeling of being watched had intensified. Melissa appeared in the doorway, Lucy half hidden behind her. What's happening? Before Ethan could respond, Steve's personal phone vibrated. He checked the screen, relief washing over his features. It's Jack. He's 10 minutes out. He answered the call, speaking in low, urgent tones. Ethan drew Melissa and Lucy away from the door, keeping his voice calm despite the alarm bells ringing in his head. We're fine. Just a strange phone call, but Jack will be here soon. Lucy's gaze was unnervingly perceptive. It was the bad man, wasn't it? The one who hurt my mom. Ethan exchanged a glance with Melissa, who nodded slightly, encouraging honesty. Yes, we think so. But we're safe here, and we have people protecting us. Lucy's small shoulders straightened. I'm not scared of him. Mom wasn't either, in the end. That's why she hid the evidence. There was something in her tone that caught Ethan's attention. Lucy, do you know what was on that USB drive your mom hid? The child's expression turned inward, as if searching her memories. She never told me exactly, but the night she gave me the journal, she said something about a backup plan. That even if something happened to her, the truth would come out when it needed to. Before Ethan could probe further, the sound of a car on the gravel driveway interrupted them. Steve moved to the window, gun drawn, then relaxed as he recognized Jack's sedan. Jack Reynolds entered the house like a storm front, his normally composed demeanor crackling with tension. He carried a leather briefcase which he placed on the coffee table as soon as greetings were exchanged. We need to talk, he said to Ethan, his voice grave. Alone, Melissa frowned. Whatever it is, I think I should hear it too. Jack glanced at Lucy, who was watching the adults with undisguised interest. Perhaps the little one could get settled in her room for a bit. I'm not little, Lucy protested, and it's about my mom's evidence, isn't it? I should stay. The adults exchanged looks, a silent negotiation taking place. Finally, Melissa sighed. Lucy, why don't you go set up your drawing supplies in your room? I promise we'll fill you in on anything important. Lucy seemed about to argue, but then nodded reluctantly. Fine, but don't treat me like a baby. I've been taking care of myself for a long time. Once she had disappeared down the hall, Jack opened the briefcase and spread several photographs on the table. They showed whiteboards with financial projections, computer screens displaying email exchanges, and documents with Nova Industries letterhead. Sarah Miller was methodical, Jack explained. These photos clearly show Nova falsifying financial reports to investors, which is securities fraud. But more concerning for us, he pointed to an email visible in one of the photos. This suggests they were planning something specifically against Horizon. The language is vague but concerning. Alternative acquisition methods and leverage points are mentioned. Ethan studied the photos, his tech-trained eyes picking out details. These are dated just over 3 years ago, right before Sarah's accident, and right before Nova's first acquisition offer to Horizon, Jack confirmed, which you rejected. So they've been planning this for years, Melissa said softly, waiting for the right moment. Jack nodded grimly. The timing of the accident that nearly killed you both wasn't random. My sources tell me Nova's financial position is precarious. They need Horizon security technology to secure a major government contract that would keep them afloat. When traditional acquisition methods failed, they got desperate. But why target Melissa? Ethan demanded, anger rising in his voice. I'm the one who refused to sell. Because she's your weakness, Steve interjected from his position by the window, and the baby even more so. They probably planned to make it look like a tragic accident, then approach you when you were vulnerable with grief, offering a generous acquisition as a tribute to your wife's memory. The calculated cruelty of it left them in stunned silence. Ethan reached for Melissa's hand, gripping it tightly. Jack cleared his throat. There's more. The missing USB drive. I think I know what happened to it. My team leader noticed something odd when they first found the hidden compartment. There were marks suggesting the USB had been recently moved, yet the compartment itself was dusty, untouched for years. Someone found it before your team got there, Ethan concluded. Yes, but not recently, Jack corrected. I think Sarah Miller moved it herself shortly before her accident. She suspected she was being watched and relocated the most crucial evidence. Melissa leaned forward. But where? And why not tell Lucy about the new hiding place? Maybe she did, Ethan said slowly, remembering Lucy's words. She mentioned a backup plan, that the truth would come out when needed. We need to talk to Lucy again, Jack decided. Carefully, she might know more than she realizes. But when Melissa went to fetch Lucy from her room, she returned alone, her face pale. She's gone. The window's open, and she left this. She held out a folded piece of paper with childish handwriting. I know where Mom's real hiding place is. I remembered. It's at our old apartment. I'm going to get it before the bad men do. Don't worry about me. I'm good at being invisible. Lucy. Damn it! Jack cursed, already moving toward the door. How long has she been gone? I'm not sure, Melissa admitted. She was quiet, but I thought she was just drawing. Steve was already outside, scanning the property. No sign of her on the main road. She must have gone through the back, toward the coastal trail. She's on foot, she can't have gotten far, Ethan reasoned, trying to stay calm despite the fear gripping his chest. An 8-year-old girl alone. Someone will notice her. Unless she doesn't want to be noticed, Jack pointed out grimly. By her own admission, she spent 3 years avoiding authorities and being invisible. As they organized a search, the landline rang again. This time Jack answered, his expression darkening as he listened. It's for you, he said to Ethan, his voice tight. Ethan took the receiver, already knowing who would be on the other end. Mr. Carter. Blackwell's voice was smooth as silk. It seems a little bird has flown the coop. Fortunately, my associates have keen eyes. The child is safe for now. I suggest we meet to discuss terms. You have something I want, and I have something you've grown rather attached to. Cold fury replaced fear in Ethan's heart. If you harm one hair on her head, please, Blackwell interrupted, sounding almost offended. I'm a businessman, not a monster. The girl will be returned unharmed once our transaction is complete. I'll text instructions to your phone. Come alone or don't bother coming at all. The line went dead, and Ethan turned to the others, his face ashen. Blackwell has Lucy. The tension in the room was palpable as Ethan relayed Blackwell's message. Melissa sank onto the sofa, her hands protectively cradling her belly, as if to shield their unborn child from the harsh reality unfolding around them. We need to call the police, she insisted, her voice trembling but determined. Jack shook his head grimly. Not yet. If Blackwell has the local authorities in his pocket, it could make things worse. And he specifically said to come alone. Involving law enforcement could put Lucy at risk. So what, we just give him what he wants? Ethan paced the room, frustration and fear battling for dominance. We don't even know what that is. The USB drive is missing and the photos alone won't be enough to satisfy him. I think I might know what he's after, Steve said quietly. All eyes turned to him as he continued. It's not just the evidence about Nova's financial fraud. Based on the fragments we saw in those photos, there's something bigger. Something that would not only tank Nova's stock, but potentially lead to federal charges against Blackwell himself. Jack nodded slowly. The government contract. Nova's been positioning itself to secure a $1 billion cybersecurity contract with the Defense Department. If there's evidence they falsified security testing results or bribed officials, that would explain the lengths they're willing to go to, Ethan finished. But again, we don't have that evidence. The USB drive is still missing. His phone vibrated with an incoming text. The message was brief. Glass Beach, 1 hour, bring all evidence, come alone. Ethan showed the others. Glass Beach is only about 15 minutes from here. It's a public place, but secluded enough for a private conversation, Jack mused. Smart choice on his part. I'm going, Ethan said, his decision already made. Even without the USB drive, I have to try to get Lucy back. Melissa stood, her face pale but resolute. Not alone. Blackwell doesn't know me. I could be nearby as backup. Absolutely not, Ethan and Jack said in unison. You're 6 months pregnant, Ethan added more gently. I can't risk both of you. We'll handle the backup, Jack assured her. Steve and I can position ourselves discreetly. Blackwell won't see us, but we'll have eyes on the exchange at all times. As they quickly formulated a plan, Ethan gathered the photographs and Sarah Miller's journal. Whether or not Blackwell would consider this sufficient evidence remained to be seen, but it was all they had. Wait, Melissa said suddenly. What if Lucy actually did remember where her mother hid the USB drive? What if her note wasn't just a diversion? Ethan paused. You think she really went to their old apartment? It's possible, Jack conceded. Children often remember details adults overlook, especially about their homes. Where did they live? Steve asked. Jack was already checking his phone. Sarah Miller's last known address was in San Rafael. I can have someone check it out, but not in the next hour. So we proceed as planned, Ethan decided. I meet with Blackwell, try to negotiate Lucy's release with what evidence we have, while you two provide backup. Melissa's eyes filled with tears as she embraced Ethan. Be careful, Lucy needs you, we both do. Ethan held her tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. I'll bring her back, I promise. The drive to Glass Beach was tense and silent. Jack took a circuitous route, watching for tails, while Steve went ahead in a separate vehicle to secure the area. Ethan sat in the back, reviewing the photos one last time, searching for anything they might have missed that could give him leverage. Glass Beach, named for the colorful sea glass that washed up on its shores, was relatively quiet that afternoon. A few tourists wandered the shoreline, collecting the smooth, polished fragments, but the northern end where Blackwell had specified the meeting was deserted. I'll drop you here, Jack said as they approached the parking area. Steve is already in position on the bluff overlooking the meeting point. I'll circle around and approach from the south. Remember, no heroics. Your job is to keep the conversation going while we assess the situation. Ethan nodded, tucking the envelope of evidence inside his jacket. If anything goes wrong, get Melissa somewhere safe. She and the baby are the priority. Nothing's going to go wrong, Jack assured him with more confidence than either of them felt. The beach was beautiful in the late afternoon light, the multicolored sea glass glinting like jewels in the sand. Under different circumstances, Ethan might have enjoyed bringing Melissa here, picking out the most perfect pieces to keep as souvenirs. Instead, he walked with leaden steps toward the northern cove, where a solitary figure stood gazing out at the Pacific. Victor Blackwell turned as Ethan approached, his silver hair ruffled by the sea breeze, his expensive suit incongruous against the rugged coastal backdrop. At 55, he had the lean, predatory look of a man who had clawed his way to the top and would do whatever necessary to stay there. Mr. Carter, he greeted with a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. Thank you for being punctual. Ethan didn't return the smile. Where's Lucy? Blackwell made a tisking sound. No pleasantries. Very well. The child is safe, I assure you. One of my associates is treating her to ice cream not far from here. Once our business is concluded satisfactorily, she'll be returned to you unharmed." "I want proof she's okay," Ethan demanded. With a sigh, Blackwell removed a phone from his pocket and made a brief call. "Put her on." He held the phone out to Ethan. "Hello?" Lucy's voice was small but clear. "Lucy, are you all right? Have they hurt you?" Ethan asked urgently. "I'm okay," she replied. "They caught me on the bus to San Rafael. The lady with the red hair bought me chocolate ice cream, but I don't trust her. Her smile is fake." Relief at hearing her voice mingled with admiration for her perceptiveness. "Hang tight, sweetheart. I'm going to bring you home soon." The phone was taken away before Lucy could respond, Blackwell ending the call with a satisfied expression. "Satisfied? Now let's discuss business. I believe you have something that belongs to Nova Industries." "Funny. I was about to say the same to you," Ethan countered. "Lucy doesn't belong to anyone but herself." Blackwell waved a dismissive hand. "The child is merely collateral to ensure your cooperation. What I want are the documents Sarah Miller stole from our servers 3 years ago." "You mean the evidence she collected of your financial fraud?" Ethan kept his voice level, watching for any reaction, or perhaps the evidence regarding the Defense Department contract. A flicker of something, surprise perhaps or concern, crossed Blackwell's face before his mask of indifference returned. Whatever fantasies the cleaning woman concocted are irrelevant. Company policy clearly states that all information observed or obtained on Nova premises is proprietary. She violated her employment contract by taking photographs of confidential material. "Is that the justification you used when you arranged her accident?" Ethan asked, unable to keep the disgust from his voice. Blackwell's eyes narrowed. "Accidents happen, Mr. Carter, especially to people who don't respect boundaries, people like Sarah Miller, people like you and your lovely wife." The thinly veiled threat ignited Ethan's anger, but he forced himself to remain calm. "I have the photographs and Sarah's journal," he said, patting his jacket pocket. "But the USB drive you're so concerned about isn't with me." "Then our conversation is pointless," Blackwell said coldly. "The arrangement was for all evidence to be turned over." "The arrangement was made under duress," Ethan countered. "You kidnapped a child to force my compliance, but I'm willing to negotiate. I'll give you what I have now as a show of good faith, and once Lucy is safely returned, we can discuss the rest." Blackwell studied him for a long moment, calculation evident in his gaze. "And if I refuse?" "Then you get nothing," Ethan said simply. "And the evidence I do have goes to the FBI, the SEC, and every major news outlet in the country by tomorrow morning." A tense silence stretched between them, broken only by the rhythmic crash of waves against the shore. Finally, Blackwell gave a curt nod. "Very well, give me what you have and I'll have the child brought here." Ethan hesitated, then slowly removed the envelope from his jacket. As he extended it toward Blackwell, a sudden commotion from the parking area caught their attention. A police car had pulled in, lights flashing. Behind it was a familiar sedan, Catherine's car. "You brought the authorities?" Blackwell hissed, his composure cracking. "No," Ethan said, genuinely surprised. "This isn't part of the plan." Before either man could react further, a small figure broke away from the group by the police car and began running across the beach toward them. Lucy, her blonde hair flying behind her, was sprinting full tilt in their direction. "Ethan," she shouted, "don't give it to him. I found it. I found Mom's real hiding place." Blackwell's face contorted with fury. He lunged for the envelope in Ethan's hand, but Ethan was faster, pulling it back and stepping away. "It's over, Blackwell," he said firmly. "Whatever game you were playing ends now." Blackwell's hand moved to his pocket, and for a heart-stopping moment Ethan thought he might be reaching for a weapon. Instead, he withdrew his phone and barked a command into it before turning back to Ethan. "You've made a serious mistake today, Carter," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "One you'll live to regret." With that, he turned and began walking swiftly toward a path leading up the bluff, away from the approaching police. Ethan's attention was fully on Lucy now as she reached him, throwing her small arms around his waist and hugging him fiercely. "I found it," she repeated breathlessly. "I remembered where Mom hid the real evidence. It wasn't at our apartment. It was in her locker at the community center where she used to take me swimming. She had a special box there and nobody ever cleaned out her things after she was gone." From the parking area, Catherine was approaching with a police officer and another man Ethan didn't recognize. Jack emerged from his hiding place to join them, as did Steve from his position on the bluff. "What happened?" Ethan asked Lucy, kneeling to her level. "How did you get away, and why is Catherine here?" Lucy's explanation tumbled out in a rush. "I really was going to San Rafael, but the bus stopped in Fort Bragg and the lady with red hair was following me. She pretended to be nice, but her eyes were mean. When she went to the bathroom at the bus station, I ran away and found a library. I called Ms. Catherine because I remembered her number, and she came to get me. She brought Officer Martinez because he's her friend and he doesn't work for the bad men." Catherine reached them, slightly out of breath. "When Lucy called, I knew something was terribly wrong. She told me about remembering where Sarah had hidden something important, so we drove straight to the community center in San Rafael. The manager remembered Sarah and still had her things in storage. The officer, Martinez, stepped forward. And I came along because Catherine mentioned possible kidnapping and corporate espionage. Frankly, I thought she was exaggerating until I saw what was in that locker." He held up a clear evidence bag containing a USB drive and what appeared to be a small voice recorder. "Sarah didn't just take photos," Catherine explained. "She recorded conversations that explicitly detailed Nova's plan to falsify security testing data for the Defense Department contract and to use personal information against you if you refuse to sell Horizon." Jack examined the evidence bag with professional interest. "This is more than enough for federal charges. Blackwell's finished." As if on cue, the sound of screeching tires drew their attention to the parking area, where Blackwell was attempting to flee in a black Lexus. Officer Martinez spoke urgently into his radio, and within moments, another police car appeared, blocking the exit. They watched as Blackwell was removed from his vehicle and handcuffed, his composed facade finally crumbling as he was led to a patrol car. "Is it over?" Lucy asked, her small hand finding Ethan's. "Really over?" Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "Thanks to you and your mum, I think it is." As they walked back toward the parking area as a group, Lucy suddenly stopped, her attention caught by something in the sand. She bent down and picked up a piece of sea glass, perfectly smoothed by years of ocean waves, its color a deep sapphire blue. "It's beautiful," she said, holding it up to the light. "Can I keep it?" "Of course," Ethan smiled. "They're a souvenir of the day you helped bring down a corporate criminal." Lucy tucked the glass carefully into her pocket, then looked up at Ethan with serious eyes. "What happens to me now?" It was the question they had all been avoiding, the uncertainty that hung over their newfound victory. Ethan glanced at Catherine, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Well," he began, kneeling again to meet Lucy's gaze, "Melissa and I were thinking, if you wanted to, you could stay with us. Not just temporarily, but permanently. We'd need to go through the proper legal channels, of course," but he didn't get to finish as Lucy threw her arms around his neck, nearly knocking him over with the force of her embrace. "I already drew us as a family," she whispered. "I knew you'd ask." Over Lucy's shoulder, Ethan caught Jack's eye. The security expert was smiling, a rare sight that transformed his usually stern features. "Let's go home," Ethan said, standing with Lucy's hand firmly in his. "Melissa's waiting, and she'll be very happy to see you safe." As they left Glass Beach behind, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the colorful fragments of glass that lined the shore. Like those broken pieces, smoothed and transformed by time and tide, Ethan realized that something beautiful had emerged from the jagged edges of tragedy and danger, a family, unconventional perhaps, but no less real or precious for it. And in his pocket, Sarah Miller's journal, the catalyst that had brought them all together, seemed to pulse with a significance that transcended its simple paper and ink construction. It was a mother's legacy, a daughter's salvation, and now the foundation of a new beginning. 3 months later, Ethan stood in the doorway of what had once been their guest room, watching as Lucy carefully arranged a collection of sea glass on the windowsill of what was now undeniably her space. The room had undergone a transformation. Walls painted a soft blue at Lucy's request, bookshelves filled with both classics and the latest middle-grade novels, and a desk where her artistic talents could flourish. The drawings that once fit in a small backpack now adorned the walls, colorful testaments to her imagination and resilience. "Almost ready?" he asked. "The judge won't wait forever." Lucy turned, her face more relaxed and childlike than he had ever seen it. Gone was the wary, hypervigilant expression she had worn when they first met on that rainy night. In its place was the look of a child who was beginning to trust in the stability of her world again. "Just one more," she said, placing a final piece of sea glass, the sapphire blue one from Glass Beach, in the center of her collection. "There. Now I'm ready." In the living room, Melissa was waiting, radiant in a simple maternity dress that accentuated her now prominent baby bump. At 8 months pregnant, she moved more carefully, but her eyes shone with anticipation for the day ahead. "You look beautiful," Ethan told her, dropping a kiss on her forehead. "So does Lucy," Melissa replied, smiling as the girl joined them. "That dress is perfect on you." Lucy smoothed the fabric of her new blue dress self-consciously. "Do you think the judge will like me?" "The judge will love you," Melissa assured her. "But more importantly, this hearing is just a formality. The hard part is already done." Indeed, the past 3 months had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, interviews, and paperwork. The evidence from Sarah Miller's locker had led to federal charges against Victor Blackwell and several Nova executives. The company itself was under investigation, its stock price plummeting as details of the fraud emerged. Ethan's company, Horizon Technologies, had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, its reputation enhanced by the contrast with Nova's ethical failures. Throughout it all, Lucy had remained with them, first under emergency temporary guardianship, and then, as the legal wheels turned, under a more permanent arrangement that would be finalized today. Catherine arrived to drive them to the courthouse, her silver hair now styled in a smart bob that took years off her appearance. She had become a frequent visitor to their home, a beloved presence Lucy affectionately called Grandma Cat, despite the lack of biological connection. "Ready for the big day?" she asked, embracing each of them in turn. "As ready as we'll ever be," Ethan replied, helping Melissa into her coat. The courthouse was an imposing structure of granite and marble, but inside, the family court had been designed to feel less intimidating. The judge, a kind-faced woman in her 60s named Judge Eleanor Simmons, greeted them warmly as they entered her chambers for the private proceeding. "So this is Lucy," she said, smiling at the child who stood between Ethan and Melissa. "I've heard a lot about you, young lady. Quite the brave one, aren't you?" Lucy straightened her shoulders slightly. "My mom always said being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right even when you are scared." The judge's eyes softened. "Your mother sounds like a very wise woman. I think she would be proud of you today." The proceedings moved forward with surprising smoothness. Their lawyer presented the final paperwork. Witnesses were called to testify to the bond that had formed between Lucy and her prospective adoptive parents, and Lucy herself answered the judge's gentle questions about her wishes and feelings. When asked if she understood what adoption meant, Lucy's answer brought tears to everyone's eyes. "It means they're choosing to be my forever family," she said simply. "And I'm choosing them too." Judge Simmons nodded, visibly moved. "That's exactly right." She turned to Ethan and Melissa. "And do you, Ethan and Melissa Carter, understand the responsibilities you're undertaking? To love, protect, and nurture this child as your own for the rest of your lives?" "We do," they answered in unison, their hands linked together. The judge smiled and signed the final decree with a flourish. "Then, by the power vested in me by the state of California, I hereby declare Lucy Miller to be legally adopted. From this day forward, to be known as Lucy Miller Carter. Congratulations to all of you." Lucy's face broke into a radiant smile as applause filled the small chamber. Jack Reynolds, who had come to serve as a witness, clapped Ethan on the shoulder in silent congratulation. Steve Hendricks, now promoted to Chief of Security at Horizon following his role in bringing down Blackwell, discreetly wiped a tear from his eye. "There's one more thing," the judge said as the celebration quieted. "A letter was found among Sarah Miller's possessions at the community center. It was addressed to Lucy's new family, should such a situation ever arise. I've been holding it until today." She handed Lucy a sealed envelope, slightly yellowed with age. The child took it with trembling hands, looking up at Ethan and Melissa for guidance. "Would you like to read it privately?" Melissa asked gently. Lucy shook her head. "No, I want us to read it together, as a family." Back at home, they gathered in the living room. Catherine had prepared a small celebration, with Lucy's favorite chocolate cake and sparkling cider for toasting. But before the festivities could begin, Lucy carefully opened the envelope her mother had prepared years earlier, somehow knowing that one day her daughter might find a new family. "Do you want me to read it?" Ethan offered. "Please," Lucy whispered, nestling between him and Melissa on the sofa. Ethan unfolded the letter, written in the same neat handwriting as the journal that had started their journey together. "To the family who has chosen my Lucy," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion welling in his chest. "If you're reading this, it means two things. I am no longer able to care for my daughter, and Lucy has found people who love her enough to make her their own. For the first, I am deeply sorry. For the second, I am eternally grateful. Lucy came into this world on a rainy April morning, bringing light into my life when I needed it most. She has always been special, observant, compassionate, and wise beyond her years. She remembers everything she sees and feels everything deeply. These qualities will bring her both joy and pain throughout her life. I don't know the circumstances that have brought you together, but I want you to know a few things about the child you're welcoming into your home. Lucy loves to draw and can spend hours creating worlds on paper. She needs time alone to process her thoughts, but don't let her isolate herself too much. She's braver than she thinks and stronger than she knows. When she has nightmares, only the sound of rain seems to soothe her. She prefers the crusts cut off her sandwiches, but will never tell you this because she doesn't want to be a bother. Her favorite color changes with her mood. Blue when she's content, yellow when she's happy, purple when she's curious. I want you to know that entrusting her to you is the hardest thing I've ever had to contemplate. But if you're reading this, it means you've opened your hearts to her. For that, I have no adequate words of thanks. Please tell her about me sometimes. Tell her I loved watching her sleep, the way her eyelashes fluttered when she dreamed. Tell her I kept every drawing she ever made. Tell her I tried my best to protect her, even when that meant making difficult choices. Most importantly, tell her that love doesn't end, even when people do. Tell her that wherever I am watching over her, proud of the person she is becoming. To you, her new family, I entrust my greatest treasure. Love her fiercely, protect her bravely, guide her wisely, and know that in doing so, you are continuing a love story that began long before you met her. With eternal gratitude and hope for Lucy's future, Sarah Miller. Silence filled the room as Ethan folded the letter. Lucy's eyes were bright with tears, but there was a peace in her expression that hadn't been there before. "She knew," Lucy said softly. "Somehow she knew I'd find a new family someday." "Your mother was very wise," Catherine said, wiping her own eyes, "and very brave." Lucy nodded, touching the letter gently. "Can we keep this somewhere safe? With Mum's journal?" "Of course," Melissa promised. "They're part of your history, part of who you are." The baby chose that moment to deliver a particularly strong kick, causing Melissa to gasp slightly. Lucy immediately placed her hand on Melissa's belly, her face lighting up as she felt the movement. "He's saying congratulations too," she declared, with the certainty only a child could muster. "He's happy I'm officially his big sister now." Ethan laughed. "I think you're right, though we still don't know for sure it's a he." "It is," Lucy insisted. "I've been drawing him for weeks. He has your eyes and Melissa's smile." The adults exchanged amused glances at her conviction. Lucy had been insisting on the baby's gender since the beginning, and at this point, none of them doubted her intuition. As the afternoon progressed into evening, their small celebration grew as friends arrived to mark the occasion. Jack brought a beautifully crafted wooden toy chest, hand-carved by his father. Steve and his wife presented Lucy with a bicycle, complete with a basket for collecting treasures on her adventures. Catherine's gift was a handmade quilt stitched from fabrics in all of Lucy's favorite colors. Later, as the gathering wound down and guests began to depart, Ethan found Lucy standing by the window in her room, gazing at the stars beginning to appear in the twilight sky. "Happy?" he asked, joining her. She nodded, leaning against him comfortably. "I was just thinking about what to name the baby." "Oh? Got any suggestions?" Lucy's expression turned serious. "I think Samuel. It means God has heard or asked of God. Mum told me once that names should mean something important." Ethan considered this. "Samuel Carter. It has a nice ring to it." "Samuel Ethan Carter," Lucy corrected. "After his dad." A lump formed in Ethan's throat. "I'll discuss it with Melissa, but I think she'll like it." Lucy smiled, satisfied. Good. And when he's older, I'll tell him the story of how we all found each other, how Mum helped save us, and how we helped make sure people knew the truth about what happened to her. That's a story worth telling, Ethan agreed, but maybe leave out the scarier parts until he's older. I'll just tell him that sometimes invisible girls save the day, Lucy said with a hint of her old solemnity. And sometimes families find each other in the strangest ways. As they stood together, watching the first stars of evening emerge, Ethan reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. From a rain-soaked night of danger to this peaceful evening of belonging, their paths had converged in ways none of them could have anticipated. In a few weeks, their family would grow again with the arrival of Samuel. Lucy was already taking her role as big sister seriously, preparing drawings to decorate his nursery and practicing lullabies she wanted to sing to him. Melissa appeared in the doorway, her hand resting on her rounded belly. "Everything okay in here?" "Perfect," Ethan replied, extending his arm to include her in their stargazing. "Lucy was just suggesting we name the baby Samuel Ethan Carter," he added. "What do you think?" Melissa's eyes softened. "Samuel, I love it. It feels right somehow." Lucy beamed, pleased by their acceptance of her suggestion. "It's settled then. Samuel Ethan Carter, coming soon to complete our family." "Complete for now," Melissa corrected gently. "Families have a way of growing in all sorts of unexpected ways. We should know that better than anyone." As if to emphasize her point, Catherine called from the living room, announcing that it was time for cake. The three of them moved toward the sound of friendly voices and laughter, drawn by the warmth of connection and the promise of celebration. Later that night, after Lucy had fallen asleep, her new adoption certificate framed and hanging proudly on her wall, Ethan and Melissa sat on the porch swing, enjoying the peaceful end to a momentous day. "Did you ever imagine our lives would turn out like this?" Melissa asked, her head resting against his shoulder. Ethan thought about the rainy night that had changed everything, the crash, the mysterious child appearing out of nowhere, the danger and uncertainty that had followed. But he also thought about the unexpected gifts that had emerged from that chaos. Lucy's presence in their lives, the deeper connection he and Melissa had forged through adversity, the new appreciation for the fragility and preciousness of the life they were building together. "Not in a million years," he admitted, "but I wouldn't change a thing." "Not even the crash," she teased gently. He considered this. "Well, maybe that part. But everything that followed, it led us here, to this moment, to our family." As if in agreement, the baby kicked, a gentle reminder of the future that awaited them. Melissa smiled, guiding Ethan's hand to feel the movement. "Samuel approves," she murmured. From inside the house came a small sound, Lucy calling out in her sleep. Ethan started to rise, but Melissa was already on her feet. "I'll go," she said. "She just needs to know someone's there." Ethan watched as his wife, graceful despite her advanced pregnancy, went to comfort their daughter, a child who had entered their lives like a guardian angel and stayed to become a beloved part of their family. The journey hadn't been easy, and there would undoubtedly be challenges ahead, but the foundation they had built was strong. Sarah Miller's journal sat on the side table, a silent witness to the extraordinary chain of events it had set in motion. Ethan touched its worn cover thoughtfully, grateful for the brave woman who had documented the truth at great personal risk, and for the daughter she had raised to recognize that truth when she saw it. "Thank you," he whispered to the night air, his words meant for Sarah, wherever she might be. From Lucy's room came the soft sound of Melissa's voice, singing a lullaby. The tension in the house eased as Lucy settled back into peaceful sleep, secure in the knowledge that she was home, she was safe, and she was loved. And in that moment, under a canopy of stars, with his growing family, sheltered within these walls, Ethan Carter knew a peace he had never thought possible. The storm had passed, leaving behind not destruction, but a landscape transformed, richer, more vibrant, and filled with possibilities that had not existed before. Through the darkness of corporate greed and personal loss, a light had emerged. The light of a family forged not by blood, but by choice, by courage, and by love that transcended even the deepest shadows.